Thank you all for coming. The food and beverages might be gone already, which is amazing. But if they're not, feel free to get up and get some food while we're getting started here. Welcome to the Tabula Poetica reading series. I want to mention that our next event is in a few weeks on October 15th, and that will be the poet C.K. Williams. Today's poet, Williams, and also Seth Michelson, who's here in November, are translators in addition to writing their own original poems. So I'm especially pleased that this year we're including translation as a major focus of the reading series, and because of that, or in conjunction with that, or we're lucky to have the Department of Languages supporting us with these readings, and John Boitano, the Chair of Languages, will be introducing the poet this evening. I also want to give a little plug to the Big Orange Book Festival, which is occurring in a couple of weeks, and on October 12th, there's a panel on California poets. That's at 3:45 on October 12th. And that'll feature a former Tabula Poetica poet, Victoria Chang, and a couple of other poets, but I only mentioned the Tabula Poetica poets by name, so we're the in crowd. Before we get started, make sure you turn off your cell phone. And keep in mind that after the reading, if you're interested in Sholeh's work, she's going to read some translation, read her own stuff. The bookstore has a collection, an edited collection of translations available around the corner, and that's called The Forbidden. We also have some books available in addition to the bookstore books, and those are $15 a piece, and then there's one that's an original collection, and it's a steal at $10. So if you'd like to purchase one of those books, come see us. Sholeh will be available for book signings after the reading. I also want to thank several people and units for supporting Tabula Poetica. Most of our support comes from the English department, and I'm very grateful to have a whole bunch of colleagues and a department that supports this program. Special thanks, of course, goes to our department chair, Joanna Levin, also our administrative assistant, Debbie Thacker, and the Tabula Poetica graduate assistant, Michael Tesoro. Leatherby Libraries, where we're all sitting, and Dean Charlene Baldwin is the space holder here. Leatherby Libraries and the Fish Interfaith Center have been very great about offering us spaces to hold the talks and the readings. And in addition, Charlene and the library always host one of the receptions. And I think there might be wine, but I'm not sure. But if I mention it, maybe there will be. The Department of Languages, as I mentioned, also Schmid College of Science and Technology, and Poets and Writers have all provided support for specific events this year. And I'm really working hard to make this a collaborative effort. And in those terms, this year, I think, is the best and brightest thus far. So before we get started with the poems, we're going to hear a little bit about the poet from John Boitano.
I'm very pleased and honored to introduce Sholeh Wolpé. I've made extensive use of her website for this introduction. And if you just Google her name, it'll come up. Wolpé is a poet, literary translator, and writer. She was born in Iran and spent most of her teen years in Trinidad and the UK before settling in the United States. Her most recent awards include the 2013 Midwest Book Award and 2010 Lois Roth Persian Translation Prize. She is the author of several collections of poetry, including Keeping Time with Blue Hyacinths, The Scar Saloon, and Rooftops of Tehran, 2 collections of translation, Sin's selected poems of Farrokhzad, hope I didn't butcher that, which won the Lois Roth Persian Translation Award, and a special edition of Walt Whitman's Song of Myself into Persian, co-translated with Mohsen Ahmadi and commissioned by the University of Iowa's International Program. She is the editor of numerous anthologies, including Breaking the Laws of Silence, 60 American Poets Speak to the World, featuring the most respected voices in American poetry, and The Forbidden Poems from Iran and Its Exiles, winner of the 2013 Midwest Book Award. She is a regional editor and translator for the Iran section of Tablet and Pen, Literary Landscapes from the Modern Middle East, and her Iran edition of the Atlantic Review became the journal's best-selling issue. Sholeh is a poet who straddles two cultures and languages. She is committed to translating and editing poetry and other literatures from Iran because, in her view, people should dialogue through poetry and not their politicians. Sholeh's work has been translated into several languages and included in numerous poetry and fiction anthologies, such as The Language for a New Century, Contemporary Poetry from the Middle East, Asia, Beyond, Yellow as Turmeric, Fragment as Cloves, an anthology of Asian American female poets, Pow Wow, Charting the Fault Lines in the American Experience, Fiction from Then to Now, and Termers, new fiction by Iranian American writers. She has taught poetry and literary translation at Stone Coast MFA program and has participated in numerous festivals, including Dodge Poetry Festival, and sponsored international programs such as Same Gate in Turkey, interacting and writing with poets from Afghanistan, Turkey, Pakistan, France, Iran, and the U.S. She lives mostly in Los Angeles. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Is that good? All right. Well, thank you all for being here. My name is Sholeh Wolpé. If you have a hard time remembering that, just remember Olé. And Olé rhymes with Sholeh and Wolpé. Aren't I lucky? There's a lot I want to read for you and tell you today because I absolutely love going to universities. I love, love, love speaking to the young audience such as yourself because you are the future of mankind. And in the future of mankind, we want to include poetry lovers. And we also would like to have people who have the power of empathy because of literature. So I'm going to start the reading with reading poets other than myself, just a few, because I'm also a literary translator. I consider myself first a poet, but I translate. Why do I translate? Because I believe, just like John said in the introduction, that we should dialogue through literature and not through our politicians. How can we possibly dialogue through literature and poetry if there are no good translations? I want to begin the reading with a poet, Ahmad Shamloo. Now, this is a good poet as an example of how a poet can take you from here in Orange County to another country and connect to your heart and tell you what it's like to be a poet in a land where poetry of this sort, of any kind of poetry of truth, is forbidden. As you all know, I was born in Iran. I'm half Iranian, half Turkmen. That's a country right north of Iran. It's called Turkmenistan. It used to be the old Russia, then it became Soviet Union, and then it became its own country. My mother is from there, from a city called Ashgabat, which means the city of love. My father is Iranian. I was, at the age of 13, I left and I went to Trinidad. I can tell you why, but I'm not going to tell you right now. I'm going to keep you in suspense. And then after that, I went to a Catholic boarding school there, lived with my aunt in a, who had a maternity clinic in a small town called Cuva, in the middle of this tiny island. And then I went to an English boarding school in southern England. And then I came here and lived all over here. While I was away, of course, the Iranian Revolution happens. It was not an Islamic revolution, let me tell you that. It was a revolution of the people that was later hijacked by the Islamist extremists. And this poem is about what happened to people. It's by a man called Ahmad Shamlou. He's a major 20th century poet. He died a few years back. In this dead-end road, they sniff your breath lest you have said, I love you. They sniff your heart, such strange times, my sweet. And they flog love at every checkpoint. We must hide love in the back room. In the cold of this dead-end crooked road, they stoke their pyres with our poems and songs. Don't risk thinking, for these are strange times, my sweet. The man who beats at the door at the nadir of night has come to kill the lamp. We must hide light in the back room. Those are butchers in passageways with their chopping blocks and bloodied cleavers. Such strange times, my sweet. They hack off smiles from faces and songs from mouths. We must hide pleasure in the back room. Canaries are barbecued on the flames of lilies and jasmines. Such strange times, my sweet. And the devil, drunk on victory, feasts at the table set for our wake. We must hide God in the back room. Another poem in the anthology, this one called The Forbidden, which, thank God, won the Midwest Book Award because some Islamists were attacking it. And I was very upset about it, but then it won the award and I was happy. This is by a doctor, a poet who's also a doctor, Mandana Zandian. She grew up, she was a child when the Iran-Iraq war took place. What happened was that when the hostages were taken, then the country became increasingly Islamic. United States panicked and started arming Saddam Hussein so he could attack Iran. And then that lasted for 8 years, and it was a terrible miscalculation on the State Department's side because that unified people. When people have to war, then they can't fight the leaders who are doing all these terrible things. They have to come together and fight a foreign power. So this is when she was a child, and the Iraq-Iran war was going on. The state of red. The stairway of our house was narrow. The stairway of our house was supposed to be a place for hide and seek, for running up and down. It was supposed to be white, gleaming like the Milky Way. The stairway of our house was supposed to always laugh. The air raid siren was red. The siren cursed our stairway, sullied it with darkness, dirt, and stench. The siren smelled of hate. The stairway of our house, in its fear of the siren, collapsed into itself and became a deep well, dark, empty, and dry. And inside it, my dreams birthed headless nightmares, wrapped in layers of sounds, howls of jets and wolves. My mother would press her head against the stairway roof, her pulse pounding in her eyes, terrified lest she fall and be trampled under our neighbor's pious feet, the same neighbor who praised God incessantly for the war's boundless bounties. My father would shoot my hands with his eyes bullets all the way from the war at the border, so that he would not forget how young I was, dying beside my dolls. And Tehran never imagined it would become this red. Its sky red and red earth rumbled and quaked like thunder, attacked our stairway with fury. But tomorrow was always a new day, a day where the earth became pregnant with new parts of my classmates' dismembered arms. A day of 20 new lies I could slurp up in our history class, and our school believed it could look for shelter during the geometry class. And God always yawned. This book is full of really wonderful poems by people. I did translate most of them. I did translate these two, but I also used other translators. And some of them are written originally in English, but it contains poetry from the ancient and the modern, young and old, famous and not really well published. So it's a good introduction to a group of Iranian poets. Now, the other person I want to introduce to you, who is very close and dear to me, her name is Farrokhzad. She was the first woman in the history of Middle East to write poetry completely from a perspective of a woman, sexually, socially, linguistically, in every way. And she unfortunately didn't get to live very long. She died at the age of 32, but she was writing most of her poetry in mid-50s. She had a very difficult time because the society was not ready to accept a woman to write like that. Up to that point, language belonged to men, poetry belonged to men. They wrote from their perspective. And if they wrote about love or sexuality even, it was from a man's point of view. So Farrokhzad, at age 19, she wrote a poem called Sin. And I would like to read that for you. It was a very difficult poem to translate because I really wanted not only to convey the musicality of her work, but also the meaning, but not in a cliche way, because unfortunately, Persian, as beautiful as it is in the language, if you translate it straight out, it can translate into cliches. So it's very difficult. You have to recreate the language in Persian. I'm going to read you 2 stanzas of it in Persian, so you get the music of it in your ear. Gunah, which means sin. گناه کردم گناهی پر ز لذت در آغوشی که گرم و آتشین بود. گناه کردم میان بازوانی که داغ و کینه جوی و آهنین بود. در آن خلوتگه تاریک و خاموش نگه کردم به چشم پر ز رازش. دلم در سینه بیتابانه لرزید ز خواهش‌های چشم پر نیازش. Sin. I have sinned a rapturous sin in a warm and flamed embrace. Sinned in a pair of vindictive arms, arms violent and ablaze. In that quiet, vacant dark, I looked into his mystic eyes, found such longing that my heart fluttered impatient in my breast. In that quiet, vacant dark, I sat beside him, punch drunk. My lips released his lips released desire on mine. Grief unclenched my crazy heart. I poured in his ears lyrics of love. Oh, my life, my lover, it's you I want. Life-giving arms, it's you I crave. Crazed lover, for you I thirst. Lust inflamed his eyes. Red wine trembled in the cup. My body, naked and drunk, quivered softly on his breast. I have sinned a rapturous sin, beside a body quivering and spent. I do not know what I did, O God, in that quiet, vacant dark. This 19-year-old wrote this in mid-50s Iran, and of course, after it was printed, every man claimed he was the man in the poem. She then went on and wrote her work deepened. Her work sometimes became more politicized, but she gained the respect of an entire country to a point that today her status is like a rock star in Iran. This woman is an icon. And when I had my first book published, I was at a lecture where Galway Canal was reading. He's a very well-known, wonderful American poet. And he was talking about this wonderful female poet he met in Iran. Her name was Forugh, Farrokhzad. And I was like, oh my God. So afterwards, I went up and I talked to him, and he told me, look, you're a female Iranian poet. You must translate her. And that's when I started translating her work. And it took me 2 years to translate 41 poems, because I take it very seriously. Translation is serious work. You really have to honor the work of the poet, and you have to recreate something, if not as good, then better. So I really encourage you to familiarize yourself. The introduction and the beginning of the book is her life story, which is marvelous. You have to read it. Okay, I'm gonna, okay, and then, of course, having had The Forbidden come out last year, I had to have another connection to the other way. So I edited an anthology called Breaking the Jaws of Silence, 60 American Poets Speak to the World. And these are 60 incredibly wonderful poets who are speaking to the world. They are meditating on the idea of democracy, what it means to be an American, what it means for them to hearing the news from the other side. So every time I read this book from front to back, I cry, even though I edited it. But these are amazing poets. So I leave that for you to explore. So I'm going to read you poetry from 3 books, and it kind of like actually takes you on a journey of where I have been and where I'm going. Now, as a poet, we do not take sides. We do not take the side of, we're writing about Israeli and Palestinians. We do not take the side of Israelis or Palestinians. We take the side of human beings. That's my philosophy, okay? So in this book, there are 2 poems that represent both sides. I'm gonna read you one that is titled Jerusalem, August 10th, 2001. Rabbis rush out into blood-splashed streets in white gloves, picking up pieces from the sidewalks and dusty hoods of dented cars. A hand, a toe, a nose. For to rest in peace, one must be buried whole. A child, her tears thinning the blood on her cheeks, stumbles over bodies, calling out to her mother. And when she finds her, she cannot fathom why her mother will not rise, take her hand, and lead her away. A man bleeds from a gap between his legs as he begs for help from a soldier who's really just a boy in uniform. The boy throws down his gun, vomits not just the breakfast his mother made him that morning. Will the rabbis see this and rush over, pick up with their white gloves the tenderness of this boy splashed on the sidewalk, and put it back inside him so he can be whole again? As you know, taking children as soldiers is a common thing in our world, most of the world. And this is about a boy whom the Taliban, a Pakistani boy that the Taliban in Afghanistan came and recruited to fight for them. And the title is a quote from the boy saying, "I never seen such days as this." Like the Pied Piper, the mullah drives his battered truck through dusty villages, his loudspeaker singing, "Join the battle against the infidels. Fight for jihad and live eternally for Allah. Lift up your guns for him, and you shall never die." Barefoot boys, ragged, hungry from years of hard soil, follow him, dancing into the straps of loaded guns, pirouetting into caves and broken buildings. And the boys end up in a land not their own, but are told, God is everywhere. Many die. Others disappear into dark prison bowels where each day, if you are 12 filthy men, one after another. If you are 14, then 14 is your lot. A father sells tea from a cart, 1 cup at a time, washes the tiles of a mosque with a yellow bar of soap to earn the ransom the soldiers exact. Every night in his dreams, his son stands calling, "Father, I never seen such days as this." I don't really know what the solution is in the world to all this madness, but I do know this, that I didn't ask for my parents. It isn't like you bend your dainty spirit neck down from God's baby soul land and point to a copulating couple who strikes your fancy. Don't think it works that way. You are blindfolded and shut down through heaven's tunnel into life, and where you plop willy-nilly, that's your home. The Jewish couple may be in the act at the same time as their Muslim neighbor. Where you end up, even the cherub who pushed you off the edge can't know. We grow up forgetting our incidental placements, become fond of whatever bread and religion we are fed. Listen, who has salvation when we all claim it? We have to be mindful of that. Okay, so the last poem from this book is something that is a little lighter. It's about my brother at the Canadian border. It's a true story, guys, okay? My brother at the Canadian border. On their way to Canada, in a red Mazda, my brother and his friend, PhDs and little sense, stopped at the border, and the guard leaned forward, asked, "Where you boys heading?" My brother, "Welcome to Canada," poster in his eyes, replied, "Mexico." The guard blinked, stepped back, then forward, said, "Sir, this is the Canadian border." My brother turned to his friend, grabbed the map from his hand, slammed it on his shaved head. "You stupid idiot," he yelled. "You've been holding the map upside down." In the interrogation room, full of metal desks and chairs with wheels that squeaked and fluorescent light humming, bombarded with questions, and finally, race? Stymied, my brother confessed. I really don't know. My parents never said. And the woman behind the desk widened her blue eyes to take in my brother's olive skin, hazel eyes, the blonde fur that covered his arms and legs. Disappearing behind the plastic partition, she returned with a dusty book, thick as War and Peace. This will tell us your race. Where was your father born? She asked, putting on her horn-rimmed glasses. Persia, he said. Do you mean Iran? I ran, you ran, we all ran, he smiled. Where's your mother from? Voice cold as a gun. Russia, he replied. She put one finger on a word above a chart in the book, another on a word at the bottom of the page, brought them together looking like a mad mathematician bent on solving the crimes of 0 times 0 divided by 1. Her finger stopped on a word, declared, You are white. My brother stumbled back, a hand on his chest, eyes wide, mouth in an O, as in, oh my God, all these years, and I did not know. Then to the room, to the woman and the guards, I am white. I can go anywhere, do anything. I can go to Canada and pretend it's Mexico. At last, I am white, and you have no reason to keep me here. That's the story of my brother. Naughty, naughty boy. Okay, from Rooftops of Tehran. Now, Rooftops of Tehran is a journey of a girl. You can say it's me, but it's also me and you, that Persian girl sitting over there, and me and everybody else. So it's about a lot of people. But let me read you a poem about rooftops. Rooftops in Iran are flat, okay? Rooftops of my childhood were flat, a place for sleeping on summer nights, on springy mattresses, under mosquito nets, for grandmother's early calls to God, for sisters' secret rendezvous. There I sought spirits among the twilight stars, but always my eyes heavy as stones, or sin, fell to the street below, where a neighbor rushed home for his supper, the salt cellar pulled on his donkey's rein, or a servant girl hurried through, fresh bread under each arm. On that rooftop, I tasted my first kiss, read War and Peace in Farsi, watched the neighbor's teenage son decapitate his sister's cat because his sister wouldn't wear a headscarf to her classes at the university. That same boy became a morality policeman. He rode his motorcycle through the streets of Tehran, cutting women's bared arms with a poison razor blade. That was the beginning of the revolution. That was their way of pushing the women under veils. Women really resisted in the beginning, but they were very, very violent about it. My cousin, so now I would like to read a few things about exile. I'm gonna skip through all the Iranian stories. Maybe, hold on. There's another one. Maybe I should read for you here. The village well. We were children, curious. Something splashed in the belly of the well, and she took your hand, descended into the mouth, opened wide, step by concrete step down its dark spiral throat. The creature that unhinged the damp stillness of that well was not a man, not an animal, just the silhouette of something vast. You thought it was God. She thought it was Jen. And then you, with fear, did not think at all, running back up, breathless, the chill of the well at your heels. That night, you didn't wait for his leg to accidentally rub against yours, or his hand accidentally brush your thigh as it always did, away from eyes that never blinked. Instead, you reached for his knee, the flesh and bone of this gray man who pretended to be daddy's friend, beneath the table laden with almond rice your mother had lovingly cooked, the saffron stewed lamb, the chicken smothered in herbs. You squeezed so hard, his eyes turned your direction and melted into a watery scream like the one still rising in the throat of that well. The wall is the story of my cousin in London. She takes a nail, places it on the spot she has marked, bites her upper lip, lifts the hammer, misses with a loud crash. This is my cousin, the one with the Lucille Ball face, black hair, unbroken eyes. She wants to hang her dead husband's picture on the wall. The large hole in the paper-thin wall scares her stiff, as does the thought of her priggish landlord with his pinkish eyes, the gray hair jutting out of his pockmarked nose. It's been only a month since she arrived in London, a lone woman, 2 children in tow, little money, open wide for what may come, work, luck, anything. And now she's terrified because this will not do, this large hole in the wall for which the landlord could kick her out with no pity in his gurgling, kidney pie-fed gut. She hurries to Harry's Hardware, where just last week she bought 2 plastic chairs, grabs old Harry's sleeves, and in fearless, broken English cries, "I have a big hole, too big. I won't make it smaller, you help." Harry laughs and calls over Joe, who calls over Mike, and they consult, their bald heads together, 3 chuckling chums. They sent her to the shop 2 doors down. And my cousin, the sight of the big hole in the wall still patched to her mind's eyes, stumbles into the red-shaded shop, is startled by a woman screaming, "Yes, yes, give it to me, baby, you're the king." She looks up at the glaring screen, sees that the one addressed with such ardor is no Shah, just a balding naked man convulsing like one possessed over a woman's pale body. The shop sells unspeakable things, but the one that catches her eye uncannily resembles her dead husband's private part. She knows where this is, a practical joke on a foreign woman with a broken tongue. Still, she needs to mend her wall, not be kicked out, survive. She catapults out of the sex shop and back into Harry's Hardware, her chin not down, her eyes not averted, her shoulders not sagged. With flames roasting her cinnamon eyes, burning her bony cheeks, my cousin politely asks, "You help me. I have a hole in the wall." The wall. People ask me, what is home? You know, I've been away from home for so long. And I've been searching for it for a very, very long time. But home is a missing tooth. The tongue reaches for hardness, but falls into absence. The outsider. I know what it's like to be an outsider, a khariji. I know how English sounds when every word is only music. I know how it feels not to be an American, an English, a French. Call them Amrikai, Ingilisi, Faransavi. See them, see me as alien, immigrant, Irani. But I've been here so long, they may call me American, with an American husband and American children. But mark this, I do not belong anywhere. I have an accent in every language I speak. You know what? I realized finally that where you are born is like your mother, and your mother is not your home, is it? You carry your home inside of you wherever you go. And boy, if everyone in the world realized that, I think we would be that much closer to some kind of peace among human beings in this world. I'm going to finish with a few poems from the latest book, which unfortunately there are only 2 copies, one being the one I'm reading from here, but you can get it online too. This is about when I went to Trinidad. Okay, remember I said from Iran I went to Trinidad? Okay, well, I went to a house on stilt legs. I wanted to read you the one that comes before that, but oh, it's here, sorry. Pickles and donuts. Cold basements remind me of the dead fruit my mother smothered in sugar, the phallic pickles souring in tight-lipped jars. I keep my school uniform stained, my long hair pulled back tight, my walnut breasts cloaked with baggy shawls. Tell my friends next door about the red jam donut beneath our skirts. Teach her the waist-twisting dance of wrapping childhood's curtain around her body so soon unfolded like voodoo air from an uncapped perfume bottle. I breathe in books that turn my eyelashes to blue feathers, my eyelids' veins into delicate wing bones that flap and lift, travel me to an island house on stilt legs. She eats the stoned pages of an old Quran, comes of age at dusk where bombs fall on paved roads and the sky rains scalding lava that streams and streams, carries her to the sharp edge of the world. So I go off, I leave my friend, I go to Trinidad, to the house on stilt legs. I have just arrived and the air is wet. The breeze lifts up my skirt to have a look. The neighbors file in, bring baked plantains, chickpea roti, goat curry so spicy my eyes melt. They finger my curls, touch my long black eyelashes, laugh. In the street, boys hiss at my back with lips, tongue, and breath. Young men emerge skinny and dark from among tall sugarcane fields, machetes in hand. Just for you, they say, and pull out long, clean, fat stalks, bleeding sugar from the cut. The 4-leaf clover holes that line the edges below my bedroom ceiling are portholes to the stars. Fireflies come in with the breeze, turn my mosquito net into a green flashing southern sky. I tell them about Tehran's dusty streets and high walls, gardens where every tree steals innocence from eyes, where every rose offers her thorns to stitch mouths, where crows blacken the sky, snitching on the comings and goings of the moon. I sketch in the air the bell jar in which I lived and almost died, Show them the roof to my mouth where a secret grows like moss, the inside of my belly button where the cord to my homeland's womb remains uncut. Then in the boarding school, in this Catholic school, lost in Trinidad, sexless and pale, Mother Superior and her sidekick Sister Anne watch me. They say, "How do you do?" in clenched mouths British beat, then shepherd me into the school's makeshift chapel, kneel me before a cross and large framed poster of Madonna and Child. "Immaculate Mary, your praises we sing. You reign now in splendor with Jesus our King." Sister Anne bends over my small form, eyes big as the apocalypse, and whispers, "This is where we eat the body of our Lord, drink his sacred blood." She makes me sit on a red-painted cement bench in the yard, hands me a list of English be verbs to memorize: behaving, blending, belonging. My schoolmates gape at my legs, white as frosting on a bridal cake, trace their fingers along my collarbone, bumpy cheeks, and thick brown eyebrows. I feel like a Persian kebab stick in ugly uniform. The Indian girls won't oil my hair, too curly, they say. The black girls refuse to braid them, not kinky enough. But the music teacher shows me his teeth, says he will teach me English through songs. In the deserted schoolyard, he sits beside me and sings. "Yellow bird up high on banana tree. Yellow bird, you sit all alone like me." When he strums his guitar, his 6th finger wiggles like a fat, dangling worm. And then, of course, I go to England. So we're getting towards the end. Towards the end of, I'm just going to read just a few more. I went to a boarding school in Eastbourne, which is in southern England. My father sent me there because it's a retirement town. And he figures, this is a girls' boarding school in a retirement town. My daughter is safe. Little did he know that there was a boys' boarding school down the street, and we used to hold dances. And this is about one of those experiences. The Prince. The night of the dance, I wore an ankle-length caftan, hiding my body beneath its airy flow, flat shoes not to be too tall, and my roommate's lipstick brighter than orange juice. He was a prince who could have picked any of the boarding school girls, Susie with one eye blue, full-breasted Victoria, or the girl from India with a waist slender as a drumstick tree. But the 16-year-old Saudi royal asked me for the first dance, then the second, then for the rest of the night as boys and girls disappeared into dark corners while chaperones dozed off in the hall, nipping Hennessy from tiny silver flasks. My prince was shy, but not too shy to slowly drop his hand and squeeze, his lips on mine, the knife in his pocket on my groin. On the ride back, the girls taunted me. Camel drivers, virgin, imitated my accent, singing, "Don't touch the merchandise," mocked me for pushing away the fetching prince so hard he fell on his ass and twisted his wrist. What did he do? Stick his finger up pure? That night, I packed my bag, slipped out just as the sun exhaled its first breath into night, took the first eastbourne rail to London. I hid beneath a beat-up hat, collar pulled up, and by the time the headmaster was informed, called the police and my anxious parents overseas, I was at my clueless cousin's boarding house, nibbling baklava, drinking hot tea from a chipped cup. I shivered beside the coin-operated heater, ate fish and chips on yesterday's newspaper, and read Neruda, Farrokhzad for a week, Tolstoy and Austen. Quietly, I thanked my father for giving me time to strengthen the sinew that held my heart. It rained, and I didn't go out, avoided my big-boned cousin with her roto-rooter tongue and the nose of our grandmother who could smell anything rotting inside the heart. I turned the cracked mirror in my room toward the wall. Someone had scribbled "help" on the back. The rose-splattered wallpaper looked scrubbed with day-old coffee. The lone sofa sagged with the weight of absent occupants, the way my lips still felt the heaviness of that first kiss. In the end, what mattered, I learned, were the smallest blessings. The milk-sweetened tea, or the miracle of scalding water from the ancient bathtub faucet. What counted were my widowed cousin holding her own in a foreign land, and the grit to say no to what is hurled, words, glances, bullets, all. I'm going to close with two poems. And I thank you for all being here. This Keeping Time with Blue Hyacinths, I read just these last poems from it. The first part of this book is really sexy. I want to read it to you guys. I don't know what the rules are here. So let's see. I am a scuba diver. How many of you scuba dive? Yay. It's fun, isn't it? So this is about a scuba diving trip. The deep dive. Stevie's raisin-colored braids, a shade lighter than his skin, bob up down as the waves punch the boat. He signals, "Go down!" I don't. I stay close to the boat, hold tight the taut rope, can't breathe. Not the air in the tank, not the air in the air. My lungs inflate, deflate, but that's beside the point. I can't frickin' breathe. And I yell this to the waves, to the boat, to Stevie, who magically surfaces beside me, an aurous brown god in goggles, regulator hose dangling by his mouth. He holds my head between his palms, says, "But you are breathing, you are." I look at him, and even in this panic, this feeling of imminent death, I note how beautiful he is, how I could perhaps outlive this storm in this man's brawny arms, let myself go, and the hell with the world, with who I am or am supposed to be, with my anxious lover waiting at the shore. "Relax, baby," says Stevie. "I'll stay with you." He pulls me into his arms, and I breathe deep from the tank strapped to my back. Stealthily, he releases air from my jacket, adds a cube of weight to my belt, and down we go, down into the broth of another world. The sea bottom is a sandy desert, flush against massive rocks. There are cacti, tiny Joshua trees, and brown grass dancing to the water current's silent tango. Time means nothing here. Palestine, Israel, and Tehran mean nothing here. My daughter contemplating suicide at 12 means nothing here. Sons in military fatigue breathing Iraqi air means nothing here. Even women giving life and grenades taking them away means nothing here. Here, the fish are birds, electric blue fins, wings, and beneath this airless sky, Stevie and I. I'm going to end this reading with a poem way in the beginning when I was born. I was born at home. My aunt was a midwife. She brought me into this world. I love her very much. And I think for the past few years, I've ended every single reading with this poem. I warn you, there's a song in it I have to sing. I'm not a singer, forgive me, but it can't be helped. I was sung into this world. I came into this world on the same bed I later slept in as a child. My aunt, a midwife, large brown eyes, scarred the shape of the sun on one cheek, sat at the gate of my mother's womb, sang me into this world. Bia kuchulu, bia azizam, اینجا خیلی قشنگه بیا 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 کوچولو بیا عزیزم نور است و آواز عشق و ماه بیا بیا قلبمون شکوفه کرده برای تو طولش نده بیا بیا طولش نده بیا 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 Come, come, come little one, come dear one, it's beautiful here. Come, come, bia bia. Come little one, come dear one, with songs, light, a kind moon and love. Bia bia, come, come. Hearts here have blossomed to receive you. Don't tarry. Come, come. Bia, bia. Come, come. It was this song I followed into this world. Today, yellowed by age and cancer, my aunt's sapphire wings are spread. I sit by her bed, make her promise to come for me when it is my time, to sing me into the other life with the same song. Thank you. Why I left, why they sent me away at age 13. Well, nothing sensational by today's standards, but I was a child that would not take no for an answer. So I wanted to be included in the adult world, and I wanted to be part of things, and that made me unmarriageable. That means that my parents foresaw that if I grow up to be a teenager there, it would not work out for me, because I was just too rowdy, but not in a sort of a sexual way, but in sort of like an intellectual. I wanted to argue with everyone. I wanted to know why. I wanted to know why I'm not included in these things, you know, and it just made me a little bit unmanageable. And so my parents, in their infinite wisdom, which was great, they said, well, your aunt is a midwife in Trinidad. She's childless there. Go to her and experience a new life, and over there it's different. And of course, that led to many other different experiences. I learned that what it was like to be, I went from not understanding, quote unquote, the other to becoming the other. And that was an incredible experience. You know, all of a sudden I wasn't even white. You know, it was weird in Trinidad. The whites were the blonde, blue-eyed people. Then there were the Chinese, and they were considered of a different race. And all of a sudden, I was this whitish-looking girl with dark features, and they didn't know what to. It was really interesting. I was at the school, people would stare at me as I would go by because they'd never seen anything like me. And it was very interesting. So that was the beginning of sort of my wanderings through the world. But I never went back home. I was never with my parents again until my mom came to the United States. And then I lived with her briefly, with my mom and dad, when they came, because the revolution just made it impossible for them to be there. I come from a background of Baha'is and Muslims. So the Baha'i side of my family was terribly persecuted. And the Muslims were intellectuals. Some of them were leftists. So they were terribly executed, you know, and persecuted. You know, they went to jail. So a lot of them left after that. Does that answer your question? Okay.
So given this audience of young writers, what kind of advice would you give people just starting out in a writing life?
Go to the law school across the street. No. As I said to your students before, do not, I can address the poets, okay, because I'm a poet. Do not become a poet unless you have no other choice. Unless without poetry, your life is meaningless, that you will go to a loony bin if you don't become a poet. Because it's a hard life. There's no money in it, and there's less and less money. There's no glory in it, believe me, you know. And it's a hard life. But if you choose it, because it has chosen you, then be dedicated to it. Become the best. Don't go with the flow. Why do you want to be part of the masses, you know? Always go your own way. That muse, that I believe people who are truly gifted are connected to someplace else. Then follow that voice, follow that path, and be dedicated to it. And please, 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 as writers, as young people, support translation. Not that I'm asking you to go out there and translate, but write books, good books in translation. Support them. Bring translators to your colleges. It's very important. Only 2% of all books in this country are translations, and that includes technical books. That is a terrible, terrible thing. Only through translation can we get to know other cultures better. Otherwise, how else? You have to travel there otherwise, live there. Not everybody can do that. So as young writers, support other artists, support translations, and then if you choose to become a poet, be completely dedicated to it. Does that answer it?
That does.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you all for hanging out this evening. If there's any food left, you are welcome to it. Sholeh's going to stick around for a little bit, and if you need your book signed or you have a particular question, come on up.